Hey there, I'm Adam Valenta. I would like to introduce y'all to Mike Troy. I just recently had the opportunity to meet him, and we kind of got to talking. Already got our conversation started before y'all all sat down. So I have some list of questions. We can dive right into it.
Yeah, sure.
So first, I really want to start off with kind of you giving a little bit of background on who you are,
right,
and how you got your start into entrepreneurship.
So, let's see. Originally was born in San Francisco, grew up just to the north in Marin County, if anyone's familiar with that area. Went to Berkeley for college. Right out of school, took my first job with IBM in their sort of newly minted consulting division. Some of you, maybe a bunch of you are too young to remember. There was a time when IBM was really pushing big iron mainframes, RISC 6000s and stuff. So this was when IBM was just starting to kind of dip a toe in the water in that world, and that whole services division of IBM exploded. And there were, we were in a small group. There were about 30 of us, and you fast forwarded 4 years, and there were 1,600, and we were trying to hire another 1,000 people, and there were dozens of groups like ours. And so basically got my start in entrepreneurship, sort of maybe nudged into it from my time at IBM. I think I decided we were doing SAP implementations, so large ERP system implementations. At the time, SAP had not moved down to even out of the Fortune 100 world. So that was the world I lived in. I worked for one of those companies, and just sort of decided, maybe there's a little bit of I'm not sure this is a great fit for me. I loved my time at IBM. It was really, like a lot of things I think in life, you need to kind of get some perspective before you can look back and realize what a great opportunity that was. But this SAP implementation market was hot, and I had a friend at IBM, and we said, what if we took this, high demand for SAP consultants and low supply, and if you layered on having to speak Spanish, which I did because I had lived in Spain, and he did because he had lived in Chile, there must be 12 of us in the world, and we can just, command any price. And so we left IBM and started a business in Venezuela. So this is 1997. So it was a very different Venezuela than the one you read about today, but that was all coming and coincided with us leaving Venezuela as well. But it's interesting, we talk about it, there's just, one of the advantages I think that so many companies have nowadays is there's so many more things like this. There's so much more information available. There's so many more startup programs, accelerators that are really great at helping companies not make, silly mistakes that almost everybody that tries this on their own, including me, has made, and so it's quite impressive from that standpoint. And it was a great experience for me. That business did not end well, as you can imagine. It ended when Chavez got elected, and the entire economy shut down, and very, very quickly, which was surprising. And I think at the time, maybe it seemed like, well, maybe we're overreacting. We knew maybe the party was over, but we weren't sure if it was going to be kind of a gradual decline. And apparently the businesses that were there had been through this before, a lot of them, especially the big oil companies and stuff. And so it was over like a light switch, and that was really my first sort of foray into entrepreneurship. And since then, I've never really had I never really had a real job since then. And once you've been an entrepreneur for long enough, I think it's tough to. You may be unemployable. I don't know who would want to hire me at this point. I think I'd be a terrible employee. I'd recommend against it. So.
Yeah, I think I'd be a terrible employee. Honestly, I really want to know, what was that feeling like whenever it just hit the fan and you're like, oh, all right, so this is it.
Yeah.
You go through those ebbs and flows.
Well, so the interesting thing was, I think as much sort of turmoil, and I don't want to turn this political, so I'm going to just completely stay out of it, but, as much turmoil as we can have around our elections and things like that, you realize, no matter who wins, there's going to be some people that are happy, some people that are upset, but there will be sort of this peaceful transition of power. and a relative stability. I mean, I think, some things are up in the air, but in the grand scheme of things, it really sort of recalibrated, my feeling of like how bad things could get, and really just how, when you're running a business, I think it was Andy Grove wrote a book, Only the Paranoid Survive, and it really, that was drilled into me down there in terms of like, there are things that can come absolutely out of left field, like an election of, a soon-to-be dictator, effectively, and that can just shut your business down. There can be a lot of things that happen that kind of are not due to a poor idea or a bad strategy or less than perfect execution. It can be something. It can be legislative changes. In this case, it was political changes and things like that that can really make it difficult.
Yeah, I like that. Ultimately, like, what would you say? What makes you most passionate about entrepreneurship? What is that one thing that really draws you to it?
I think it's there's something about entrepreneurship, and I think kind of like inherent startups that go along with it, that as companies get big, there are a lot of competing agendas, there are a lot of politics, there are a lot of problems that people are aware of and are really sort of unable to solve for whatever reason. And when you are small and nimble, you are a lot more able to sort of like identify that problem and come right at it. And it doesn't matter who's running that division, or it doesn't matter what the focus is at the time. Like you can put all of your effort and focus behind solving that one problem. And I know they say that a startup's greatest advantage is speed. And I firmly believe that. Absolutely. I mean, it is just how fast you can react, how fast you can make decisions, how fast you can adjust, you can experiment. If things don't work, you can try something else. There's so many things I think about how large companies end up getting structured that makes it really difficult to deal with those types of situations. And a lot of times people find themselves in positions where, it's about not failing as opposed to succeeding, which is, two very different things.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I really like that. I really enjoy that that's how the startup world works, and it's all about solving the problems at hand.
Yeah.
And whenever companies become bigger, you're solving internal problems that kind of distract from the problem you're actually trying to solve.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads to the question of, is that kind of like a cue for like whenever a company starts getting big and you're involved in it, is that kind of like a cue to, well, it's my time to leave?
When I'm involved in it?
Yeah.
No, I hope not. But look, I think, as just to kind of relate it back to startups and along that sort of journey is, I think there are people that are well suited to startups for lots of different stages, and you'll see that I think some people are excellent at sort of like the early stage and the ideation and kind of just getting things going, and when it reaches sort of a certain scale and it's more about maybe like the fine tuning and the optimization and maybe some of the hard problems have been solved, they kind of lose interest. And also from like management standpoints, you can have people that are great at managing small teams, and then when a company gets to 100, 150, 200 employees, you may decide like that's not what what you're good at or even what you want to do. It's not uncommon for us to see, especially technical founders, sort of opt out of the CEO role at some point, maybe move more into like a product, because usually that's kind of where they started and that's really where their passion is. And early, when it's early stage, a lot of times you can do both. You can sort of, be the CEO and manage a small team and, deal with all the product development stuff. But like, when you get up to that point where you've got 50, 75, 100 employees, like, that there's not going to be a whole lot of time to mess with the product. You're going to be dealing with a lot of, just employee issues and team issues and things like that, and kind of leadership that, for some people that's what they want and they can really grow into those roles. And for some people, it's not totally uncommon for them to say, I really like, my passion is over on the product side. I'm going to bring somebody in that can help run it.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Do you think there comes a time whenever, like, let's say, a CEO who founded the company really doesn't want to be in the CEO position anymore? Have you ever witnessed the person having to make a decision to let go of their baby, but it's for the better? And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, all of those changes that we've seen, like at least within our portfolio, have all been the CEOs, opting out on their own. And in some cases, it's not. It may not even be really what we want. What we were thinking at that time, because in many cases, like, they're doing a great job running it, but there is sort of like there's a real economic motivation. I mean, remember, most of these CEOs are considerable shareholders in these companies, and so at some point, I think if they're very self-aware, they'll realize, like, really, if this is going to go to the next level, like, I don't want to be the person holding it back.
Yeah, I see. I really like that. So from what I saw in your LinkedIn profile, you have co-founded a company before and run it. So I wanted to ask you, whenever you're assessing new investment opportunities, what is your perspective like whenever you're looking at an investment opportunity as opposed to a VC who's only ever been in the VC game?
That's a good question. I mean, I certainly have a lot of empathy for founders. I mean, I know how tough it is. I think, I'll definitely look hard at, and I think a lot of VCs will, hard at the team, hard at the dynamics between the team. That's one thing I think, like, when startups are hard, and so that relationship between co-founders is very much something that is going to get strained at certain points, whether it's disagreement or just workload or who knows what, division of duties and things like that. It's going to get tough. And so, I mean, I think you really need a founding team that has a good working relationship between them. So I'll look for things in meetings, like one person talking over the other, and things that you would see to go, like, that doesn't that may really grate on a relationship over time. I think the other thing too is just looking for some kind of, typically it's some sort of domain expertise that really gives people like some kind of a unique insight into an industry or a problem, because I feel like there are problems can be very nuanced, and I think there are a lot of sort of obvious problems in the world that you may see somebody coming out to tackle and not really understanding, like, it's a lot more nuanced, and there's no silver bullet for that problem. And so typically I think it's the people that are coming from within an industry that understand all of the complexity of the problem and whether or not they actually think it is solvable.
Interesting. So that kind of leads to the question I had about the EMT company that you're a
board member.
Yeah. Okay. So the people who started that company, were they involved in the EMT industry?
Okay. So it's interesting you pick that one out of the portfolio, because I would say that one is it's not the person running it